Hey guys, Tom here from Metalloud, and I just got back from seeing the new Star Wars movie, Star Wars The Force Awakens. So I wanted to give my thoughts on this, and warning, there are spoilers. So I'm going to throw out a warning in there. It's going to be in the title, but I'm saying it right now in case you clicked on it. There are spoilers ahead, so if you haven't seen Star Wars The Force Awakens, do not watch this video. I'm giving you a warning right now. This is it. Alright. So to anybody who's still here who actually has seen Star Wars The Force Awakens, these are kind of just my loose thoughts right now. I'm kind of in a bubble of excitement here because I just saw the first Star Wars movie in 10 years, and I have so many feelings about it right now that I feel like I just need to get them out there and maybe talk about them, and maybe it'll be different after I've seen it a few times, but as of right now, here's kind of what I think about it. So, first of all, this movie was obviously made by somebody who loves Star Wars. There's so many little things in there that harken back to the original trilogy or are just kind of Easter eggs or classic things that you might not have paid attention to. For instance, when you first see the Millennium Falcon, the radar dish that was knocked off in Return of the Jedi is completely different. It's now a rectangle versus it was an actual dish before. So it kind of offers some continuity in there, which is great because that's something that somebody who probably didn't really appreciate Star Wars as much as I think J.J. Abrams and the people who wrote this actually did, because something like that is they would have just given it the original design if they were going to enter the Millennium Falcon, whereas this kind of throws in something a little bit different. The other thing that I absolutely love about The Force Awakens is that while the expanded universe is now considered not canon, this movie drew heavily from the expanded universe. If you've read some of the books that are out there and things like that, in particular, my favorite trilogy of books, the Jedi Academy trilogy, is just almost a parallel for The Force Awakens. There's Luke starts a Jedi Academy in the books, and one of his pupils, who Han Solo brings in, not his son, which I'll get to in a moment, but a pupil that Han Solo finds on Kessel after they crash, which is actually a shot in The Force Awakens that very much mimics the artwork of the book, where even though it was destroyed on Kessel, the Millennium Falcon crashes on the Starkiller base, and it kind of really captures that artwork. It goes back and is clearly influenced by that artwork of that book. And anyways, so Han Solo brings back a person he finds on Kessel, whose name is Kip Duron, and basically he gets seduced by the dark side. Luke starts his academy on Yavin 4, and there's an ancient Sith Lord that trapped himself in the temple, and he influences Kip Duron, and he goes evil and basically kills all of them and puts Luke in a coma. And there's this whole craziness that really feels like they drew from in this movie. It feels like a lot of that. Even the name Kylo Ren is very similar to Kip Duron. And like I said, Kip Duron wasn't Han's son in the book. He was almost like a son the way the relationship was in the book, but obviously not. So I really kind of like that. Also, not to mention the bad Death Star like vehicle in the Jedi Academy trilogy is called the Sun Crusher, and it basically, what it does is you shoot missiles with it into the sun, it implodes the sun and destroys the star system. That's how that thing works, which was kind of very similar to the way that the Starkiller base worked, where it would suck in the power of the sun and then spit it back out and destroy everything. What I really like is that while the expanded universe is now considered not canon, they obviously drew from the expanded universe, particularly those three books, and those were my favorite books especially, so I'm really happy that that is something that they did. I feel like if they were going to continue the Star Wars trilogy, those books would have been kind of the perfect place to start. They weren't as goofy as some of the other expanded universe books were. They were a little bit more serious in tone. There were some very, very dark moments in the books. And obviously they didn't mimic the books entirely, but it definitely feels like they drew heavily from it. and I really appreciate that they did that. The other thing that I really like is, well, not so much that I really like, but there were a few things I was worried about going into the movie that I like that they didn't end up doing. Like, for instance, I was really worried that with J.J. Abrams at a Star Trek-y Star Wars, like it would feel like Star Trek '09, but just with Star Wars characters, and it really did not end up feeling like that. There's the scene where Han Solo is introduced, which is very, very kind of reminiscent of Star Trek, particularly the movie from '09, and that it still works though. It never really felt like they were copying, like it didn't feel like J.J. Abrams was like forcing it to be like Star Trek, and I was worried about that's something that would happen, but that's something that didn't happen, so that ended up being great. I also was kind of worried going in that it would be too much like a new action movie, like there would be particularly there are too many cuts and be all, you know, choppy and stuff like that, like all new action movies are, where there's, you know, somebody running and then a zoom shot and then another zoom shot and you're all over the place, and that was never what Star Wars was. And I really feel like it was the perfect blend of the old Star Wars movie making and editing and style mixed with the newer movies to keep that newer audience engaged. And I really kind of like that because it never pushed too much into feeling like a newer movie, but it also didn't exactly feel like the original trilogy, and I mean that as a good thing. That, you know, they could have just copied everything from the original trilogy, and that was one of my problems with episode 1, is I feel like they tried too hard to copy the original trilogy, and it kind of felt too pointless to do. And I feel like they kind of nailed it with this. It was the perfect mix of nostalgia and old with new, and I really don't think they could have done a better job in that aspect. The fact that Kylo Ren is Han and Leia's son, I'm on the fence with that, because I mean, it works, I guess, and it's interesting, but it's not really a huge plot twist, especially because they kind of just say it happens. Like it's not like you kind of wondering, and then, you know, throughout 3 movies or 2 movies or whole movie, and then he reveals it. But what I don't like about it is it also feels forced. It feels like the only reason that Kylo Ren ended up being their son was to make that scene where he kills Han more emotional, and it kind of feels forced in that aspect, no pun intended, because it wasn't emotional to me, because, well, at least as emotional as it should be, because I was more frustrated by how obvious that scene was. You knew from the second that Han starts moving towards Kylo Ren, and the second he takes off his mask, what's coming. And it gets even worse as he hands the lightsaber out. Like, you know what's coming. It's so obvious, and I really feel like Han, if anything, deserved a better death than that. It was just that scene in particular. It's not so much that Han died. I mean, Harrison Ford was pushing for that between Empire and Jedi anyway, so it's not like this is this new shocking thing that they were pushing for all of a sudden just to, you know, make it edgy. This was something that was going to happen eventually. I mean, it would have been better if it happened, I think personally, if they had done it in a later movie, like the second or the third, but it's that part, the fact that he died doesn't bother me so much. It's more the way it was done and how obvious the setup was for it. And again, the fact that it feels like the only reason Kylo Ren was their son is to force that into the story and to kind of make that emotional. One of the rumors before The Force Awakens released was that Kylo Ren was actually nothing to do with the original characters, that he was this just person who was just obsessed with Vader and under the spell of the Supreme Leader, and that he was basically on a search to hunt down Luke and find Vader's lightsaber and find Vader's stuff. And the fact that, like, the rumor was that he himself wasn't Force sensitive in any way, and to me that kind of would have made a stronger character and a stronger villain for the movie. Not that he wasn't good. I think he definitely was a great villain. He was definitely more interesting than Dooku and Darth Maul, who was whatever, and everyone else in the prequels, and Grievous especially. But I just feel like the fact that they forced and made him into their family, again, feels forced. It doesn't feel like it was a natural thing. It kind of feels like, hey, isn't this interesting that they're connected? And I don't know. That part kind of just bothers me in a sense. And I don't know. That's why I said I'm just giving my initial thoughts, because who knows what I'm going to feel after watching this a couple times. And even if I sound disappointed, and I'm not, this movie was fantastic, and I really think this was the best they could have done. I don't think anybody else or any group of actors or directors or writers could have done a better job with it. The other issue I had was really minor, but the Captain Phasma character, she was really cool, but she really was pointless. I mean, she's only in the movie for a couple minutes, has only a couple lines, and she only serves to get captured. And it really felt like a waste of the character. I mean, I'm hoping that she returns, because she would be an interesting character to kind of see. And that actually leads me another thing. What I really liked about it is the fact that there's a lot of diversity in this movie. I mean, you don't see just white men running everywhere. I mean, Lando was really the only black character in the original trilogy, and when you follow the whole Rebel base, when you see the rebels and everything like that, most of them are men, and the women are usually kind of doing support roles, which obviously maybe for the time, but I kind of like that we saw some, there were women pilots, which there were in the original trilogy. There was a couple, but they were more pronounced in this movie. There were definitely a lot more people of color in here, which I really enjoyed, because if you're thinking about it, if you're this ragtag rebellion, especially if you know things about Star Wars universe, which gets pretty dark with racism against other people and stuff, and especially against alien races, but really against minorities in general. The Empire kind of, I know obviously they use not canon anymore, but still, that's generally how it was. And I mean, you would think that the rebellion would definitely be made up of a more diverse group of people, so I kind of like that they were represented a lot better here with this movie. I think they did a really good job with it, and in the casting and everything like that. And the other issue that I have is that I didn't like how humorous this movie was. I mean, the original trilogy had its funny moments and its funny lines, but it was never really a laugh out loud movie. I mean, there were some moments, yeah, but most of the humor was based on context rather than the actual lines. And here, it felt like a lot of the lines were humorous. Like, it felt at times like almost like a comedy. Almost not like a Star Wars movie, almost like a parody of a Star Wars movie in a way. And that part kind of bothered me a little bit, just because, while it was funny and the lines were well done, I laughed at them, obviously, but they felt out of place for a Star Wars movie. And in particular, Finn's lines really kind of felt out of place to me often. I mean, they were good, and I know what they were going for, and definitely humor was miles ahead of anything in the prequels. It never felt pandering or condescending in any way, but I just felt like it felt out of place for a Star Wars movie. And I get it, this is a new trilogy, this is a new series, they're trying something new, but still, I just didn't really like that aspect of it. Maybe that's just me holding on to the classic trilogy, but again, at least if they're going with humor, the humor they chose was well done. It was funny. What I did also like about the movie is that the parts that paralleled the original trilogy never felt like they were copying the original trilogy, or like they were trying to rip it off or anything. They felt like more like an homage than a straight rip-off of them. And I really kind of enjoyed that about it, because, it never felt like, we're just rehashing the original trilogy. This feels like a new series. And to go back to something I kind of didn't like, the ending. I mean, I felt like it would have been perfect if Luke just, opened it, took off his hood and revealed himself and maybe had a line or so, but they held on that shot way too long, and there were too many different angles. It felt like that ending scene was either unnecessary or way too long. At least that could have been a cut down. That could have been a minute or two scene where Rey just goes up and hands him the lightsaber, and he takes off his hood and reveals who he is. End of movie. I didn't really like that so much. I mean, it's fine. It's not a bad ending. I just feel like it could have been done a little bit better, and they kind of held on things a little too long. But I feel like that's kind of nitpicky about it. So again, I don't know how I feel. I'm gonna see it more times to figure out how I feel, especially because I kind of had to pee the entire time I was watching it because I made the mistake of drinking a couple cans of Monster before I went into the theaters. One thing I'm also kind of hoping, or hoped for that they didn't do, that I don't know, is that the Supreme Leader Snoke, I was kind of hoping that he would be kept in the shadows, especially for this movie, for a big reveal. I always liked that about the Emperor and about Sidious. I mean, I remember episode 1 coming out, and between episode 1 and episode 2, I mean, I was 9 years old, and I had this argument with my friend whether Sidious was Palpatine or not, and he was convinced that he was Palpatine, and I was convinced he wasn't. I studied his chin, I studied his speech patterns, and for whatever reason, 9 years old, I thought that Sidious was not Palpatine. I thought he was going to be this, shadowy character, and I mean, I think that in that aspect, they did a really good job with hiding that it is actually Palpatine. I mean, obviously, especially if you've watched the series, but I mean, if you haven't, if you're starting out with the prequels, you're really not going to be realizing that that they're the same character until the big reveal. And I like that, and I kind of wish they had done something like that with the Supreme Leader here. It kind of felt weird. It also felt weird was the hologram itself was a little too detailed to me. Again, I know 30 years, technology, whatever, but if you look at the technology advancements from 30 years between the prequels and the original trilogy, 20 years, there really wasn't that much advancement, at least for the hologram. So that they kind of jumped up where he looked like he was actually there, from their perspective inside the movie, I mean, but giant. It kind of felt weird to me. I kind of wish they had gone with the classic look, but again, probably being really nitpicky here, definitely something that really didn't bother me too much, just something I kind of had wished for. And the other thing I absolutely loved that they nailed, that was the absolute best thing, was Lupita Nyong. If that's how you pronounce it, I'm probably butchering it. I apologize to her and fans and everyone, but her character was absolutely perfect. I mean, for a CGI character, she nailed every line and every emotion and everything, and her character wasn't over the top, she wasn't overly comical or anything like that, and she was exactly what she needed to be, and I really feel like she was the best character out of this movie, and I really enjoyed seeing her, and I hope there is actually more of her that we get to see, because it was absolutely... She's actually the best. You watch that movie, you're probably going to love her character. At least I hope you do. So yeah, those are my thoughts on Star Wars The Force Awakens after my first viewing. I saw it a couple hours ago, so it's still fresh in my mind. I just wanted to kind of throw everything out there and talk about it. I'm sure I'm going to have more to say. I'm sure I'm going to make more videos on it later on. Like I said, I'm going to try to see it a couple more times so I can kind of get the full experience and really kind of give you my full thoughts on it. And possibly I might do a full review. I don't know. I'm not really good at movie reviews, but it might be coming. So just watch out for that. And, I want to know what you guys thought. If you saw this, which I'm hoping you did, because again, there are spoilers in this video that you've already watched, but what did you guys think of Star Wars The Force Awakens? Did you like it? Did you hate it? Do you think it's better or worse than the prequels, original trilogy? What do you think, and what do you think is coming next? I always want to hear from you guys, so leave anything you want to say down in the comments, and go ahead and subscribe to the channel for more.